16 to 17 lakh applications have not been acted on time. Would you say that's a failure, or would you say that's a success? The kind of scale issues that we have in the public domain is simply staggering and something that the private sector cannot comprehend. Because the private sector has well-defined objectives, the reach is clear, the resources are also finite, and good leadership on their part ensures market share, increasing profits, and so on. But for us, in the public domain, scale is a major issue that we have to contend with. There are two other problems I'd like to mention candidly. One is that there is a problem of an adversarial relationship within our system between the administration and the elected representatives. By and large, this relationship is tenuous, it's fraught with all sorts of consequences, and somehow we've not worked out a rubric by which stability, etc., can be ensured. And I was extremely pleased and thrilled to hear Dr. Pai Pannandika say that the civil servants who worked for T.A. Pai were extraordinarily impressed with him because he was a man of vision, character, and integrity. Now, in Karnataka, we have also had people of character, vision, and integrity. It is not to say that our record is bad, but over a period of time, for reasons that you've been reading in the newspapers, I'm sure all of you read newspapers, for reasons that you've been seeing in the newspapers, there has been a kind of a regression of the mean towards the lowest common denominator. And because of this kind of regression, conscientious public servants, those who want to adhere to the rule of law, those who believe in the Constitution and all that, suffer, and sometimes they suffer grievously. And we have not yet found out proper protection to ensure that this suffering is minimized. So, this kind of a tenuous relationship between the political class, the elected representatives by and large, with some honorable exceptions, and the system, the administrative system, is one of the causes for inefficiency. Because when you don't pull together, it always leads to friction. A third thing I would like to mention, and this is a failure on our part, is that in terms of people, we have not been able to manage things effectively. There are 20 million people who work in the public system. I think it's the number is 8 lakhs in Karnataka alone. And towards people, we do not have a proper coordinated HR approach. And as a result of this, because progress is entitlement bound, seniority is the key, hierarchy is still very important, the people, especially at the intermediate and lower levels, they really are alienated because they are not really related to the output. There is no ownership, to use your language. So when they are not outcome focused and when they are alienated, then the problems of inefficiency, lack of involvement arise. One of the ways this is being met with is in guaranteeing right to services. But right to services by themselves will not change the situation unless everybody within the system is fully empowered. Ladies and gentlemen, I have just a couple of points more and then I'll conclude. Within the public system, we've also had several outstanding successes, and I'd like to mention them in brief. For instance, the Indian Railways. The Indian Railways is the largest railway system in the world today. And it is a matter of great pride to us that it functions efficiently, it functions more or less on time, and it carries millions of people every day. And this is because the organizational structure is still solid, it is rugged, there's excellent training at all levels, and more than that, there is an esprit de corps which starts from the day people are inducted into the railways and carried all the way through, which is why the Indian Railways is an outstanding success. Think about it. The Indian postal system India is the only country in the world that gives post to its public 2 times a day. No matter where you are in India, if a postcard is written, a postcard, it will reach you. No other country in the world, and I have seen several of them, has this kind of postal system. Some other examples of the outstanding success in the public domain are India's space effort, ISRO, the outstanding organization that Dr. Satish Dhawan and Vikram Sarabhai put in, which today has made India one of the few countries in the world with the kind of space effort we have. And the reason why it has worked is because it is on a mission mode, it focuses on people, it places total reliance on objectives, and it is able to improve as it goes along, what you would call as Kaizen, continuous improvement. So these are all examples, and one other example is Amul, about which you know and I don't have to tell you, but closer home, the Karnataka Milk Federation, KMF, which makes under the Nandini brand, is as good an organization as Amul in terms of its product, price, and positioning. So, ladies and gentlemen, the point I want to make is that now, my third proposition is there's a lot of convergence today. That even in the public domain, there's a realization that things have to work, that they have to be focused to the people, they have to be delivered on time, and the rights and responsibilities of the people have to be duly realized. And it is this convergence that is really going to make a difference. Similarly, the convergence in the private sector, what we call corporate social responsibility, about which you know, and also the emphasis today in the private sector on community-oriented goals. Those are examples of convergence from the private sector side, and these are also examples of convergence from the public sector side. And it is this convergence which will really ensure that there is no antithetical relationship between the management and the bureaucracy. One final point and I am done. All of you are really going to have very exciting futures in the 21st century India. And my friend Nandan Nilekani says that the 21st century India is really, 21st century is really India's century because of the great demographic dividend we are going to enjoy and because of young managers like you. But if you ask me as to what the main challenge of 21st century India is, what you are going to face and what you are going to shape, it is to create a just, durable economic and social order. And in this, it's not just the public domain that must work, it must also be the private domain, it must also be a good regulatory system, it must be the development of entrepreneurship. It's only when all these things come together that we can create a just economic and social order. And that happens when there's a partnership between the public domain and the private domain. Many years ago, I had the privilege of meeting Jack Welch, who was then the chairman of GE in Bangalore. And Jack Welch had come to open the only other lab of GE outside of the United States in Bangalore. So I was fascinated by Jack Welch. You know, he had really turned around GE, brought it to what it was. And I asked him, sir, you dealt with so many people in your life, and you've really spotted talent. What are the things you look at when you identify talent, managers, young people? And he said, there are 4 E's that are very important for me, and I look at these 4 E's in each person. And these E's, he said, was, the first is energy. Obviously, a young manager must be energetic. Otherwise, he or she cannot manage. The second E he spoke about was to energize others, to ensure that your co-workers, people in your team, also work as hard as you, are as motivated as you, can perform as well as you. The third E he spoke about was empathy. You know, the kind of empathy that the late T.A. Pai displayed to his surroundings, compassion, understanding. The fourth E is something of great relevance to all of us this evening, which is execution capacity. To be able to do things on time, to ensure that whatever is set out is done, whether you are in the public domain or the private domain. So, ladies and gentlemen, it is only when the public domain and the private sector come together, it's only when all these four E's are fused that we can realize this great ideal of 21st century India being a just and durable economic and social order. And this is something that would have also made T.A. Pai very proud. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir, for that enchanting speech. Sir, I don't think the Indian public really thinks that Indian bureaucracy is the worst in the world today. They are actually talking about the Indian cricket team. That's in the light vein. I have seen a lot of bureaucrats who are quite honest and efficient. And I myself come from Avin Madras and also Amul. So you touched my heart as well. So I have to stand with you on that. With your permission, sir, I shall now throw the house open for questions. Questions to be addressed only on the latter topic, not on the first topic. Questions, please.
So my name is Satyajit Prabhu and I'm a first year student at TAPME. First of all, congratulations to you for the grand success of National Youth Festival at Mangalore. So please, sir, my question to you is, we have seen that the most educated, highly educated people, men of India are in the executive. And as you said in the beginning, these educated men are reporting to the likes of Pappu Yadav. So my question to you is, when will we see the day that these educated men in the executive lead the way and show the people of India that they can also enter the legislative? Because you have seen the system from the inside.
Yeah, that's a very, very good question and a very vexing question. You know, 30 years ago when I joined the IAS, in order to become an MLA, you had to kind of spend about 30,000 rupees. Today, I mean, this is off record, the press is gone, so that's fine. Today, I have been told that, you know, in order to become an MLA, you have to spend between 3 to 5 crores. And that if you have to become a member of parliament, it has to be between 15 and 20 crores. Give or take a few crores. So when the entry point is like this, what are the kinds of people who get into the system? Very important. And unless we are able to enhance the quality of people in the government politically, it is meaningless to speak about debates in the constitution and what so-and-so did in 1949 and so on, because these are the guys who are running the system today. They are. And Karnataka, in some ways, is exempt, is different from the other states, but we are also catching up very fast. And so this is a matter of great concern to all of us. Some of us can express it, some of us do not, but because this is a learning audience, I take the liberty of saying so. And I think that, you know, I don't have an answer to your question. I don't think anybody here has an answer to that question, but it is a very vexing question. Unless people get into public life and they, you know, they are able to stake out, that's a problem.
Dr. Pai Pananthikar would like to respond to that question as well.
You know, I think on one part, I entirely share with Mr. Jairaj. The point that there is this particular issue that he referred, but let me say where the systemic problems lies, which is what I mentioned. And I deliberately cited Nehru because that is the structure of governance of this country, not what the MLAs and MPs are doing today. In other words, the sovereignty of the citizen which is embedded in the constitution has been undermined by the organs of the government, and that is why the problem arises. And we have got to find out ways of making certain that the organs of government, parliament, the executive, anyone, the bureaucracy follows. Later, much comes later. Now, this is where the problem lies. Now, one way is to get into the legislature, but the other way is to divest the legislatures and elected representatives from powers which do not have. They've usurped the powers of the citizens. That's where the problem lies, and my answer is, you restructure, if necessary, let's have a second republic. I've said this in public, and Chief Justice Verma and others said, let's wait for a little time and see whether all this agitation, other things, and respond to the Prime Minister is giving, whether this will work or not. We're spending a lot of time on this issue that you're talking about. And we find that the larger problems arises because of this systematic subversion of the rights of the citizen, which is the only reason why organs have been created. So once you do this, then part of the problem will get resolved. You will still have the problem that there are certain functions, like defense of India and so on, which cannot be left to the citizen alone because you require a different kind of a systemic kind of thing. So systemic changes in the governance, giving back the rights of the citizens, and I can go into some detail about some specifics because Prime Minister Gujarat had asked me to restructure many ministries at the union government, Finance Ministry, Planning Commission and so on. And the problem was they had usurped the powers of the citizen which were creating and the resistance to the changes we suggested. It's like, even exchange controls. Dr. Manmohan Singh had tremendous resistance. I'm giving an example where the right of the citizen was being trampled upon. Or tax refund, which I had to deal personally and request his help recently. Now, these are all kinds of things and so on where these changes must take place. But in addition, what he's saying also is the other part which we should also deal with. Thanks.
Just one point, sir, with your permission. To add to what Dr. Panandikar has said, it seems now that the only effective bulwark that is there is the court. Whether it's the Supreme Court or the High Court, you are seeing the activist role they are playing. For instance, apart from the current active role, you take Delhi, the switch from fossil fuel to CNG. That was entirely on the court's insistence. And today, Delhi is largely pollution-free. Of course, it has various costs and so on. We can't do it in Bangalore because we have no infrastructure. So, there are many contradictory things that are going on simultaneously, which ensure that there is little clarity. But this is a problem that we are all facing.
Don't you feel, sir, the information technology, a new vehicle which has come to serve the public better, in spite of all that you had, the problems you are referred to, you have delivered the goods, whether it is SRT, so you are referred to. With all the political systems we have, the new instrument which has come, information technology, can men and intervention of the men get significantly reduced.
Absolutely. And for a management audience, one interesting statistic, you're right, sir. Through e-governance now, we have started e-tendering. E-tendering is, you eliminate all the manual involvement in procurement, okay? So anybody who wants to bid for a procurement has to go through the electronic tenders. What it has done is, it has reduced the premium by 30%, and it has ensured absolute transparency in procurement and allotment of bids. So that's a good example to you of transparency and how corruption has come down in many departments. So you're absolutely correct. Today we are moving towards a lot of e-governance initiatives. I mentioned Bhumi. There are many others that are now on the anvil.
Yes, Dr. Sankalpa.
Good evening, sir. Myself, Sankal Bhattacharya, faculty member in TAPME. I would like to thank you for your wonderful speech at the outset. I am curious to know one thing, only one question. Thing is, you have talked about management and bureaucracy. Management is synonymous to the private sector, whereas bureaucracy is synonymous to the public sector. But I feel bureaucracy is also existent in the private sector as well. Now, notwithstanding all the limitations of the public sector which you have pointed out, thanks to your 30 years of experience in the public sector, I am just curious to know, notwithstanding all the limitations in the public sector, why the attrition is virtually negligible. And with all the efficiency in the private sector, the firms are finding it very difficult to retain the workforce. Why is it so?
Well, this kind of rigidity is a main is a major issue in our system. For instance, in France, sir, in France, there's an open door revolving policy by which the bureaucrats can contest election or they can go join the private sector and come back. And you have this revolving policy, revolving door in the United States also. That is because they don't have a permanent bureaucracy at the top. But in our system, you're quite right, the attrition rate in the higher levels of the bureaucracy are low, but now it's changing. Now, the percentage of people quitting the All India services is significant because of the opportunities in the private sector and elsewhere. I don't know about the attrition rate in the private sector. I know in the IT sector it's very high, but that's because of greed. It's not because of need. So I think over a period of time now, even those who are joining the, let's say, All India services, they don't really aspire to spend 35 years in the All India services. Maybe they're looking for 15, 20 years at the best. So it's changing.
Yeah.
Good evening, sir. I am Kushankur. I am a faculty member of TAPMI. One small clarification, please pardon me. I think theory X and theory Y were proposed by William McGregor, whereas theory Z by William Augie. Now my question is, as we have largest share of IT students in our PGTM program, so my question is a topical area of technology business convergence. We often talk about financial inclusion. As I belong to finance and economics area, I look at financial inclusion is a consequence of technology and business convergence by reaping the benefits of demographic dividend. Now, is technology and convergence a fruit of management or bureaucracy? Now, if it is a fruit of management, then bureaucracy definitely follows, not the other way around. So, kindly, I need your comment.
Yeah, you know, my colleague Pratap Reddy has worked with NASSCOM for many years before he's come back to the police. Pratap, would you like to take a shot at that question? Because I don't know the answer, I thought you... I think you answered the question yourself, sir.
Well,
You know,
Mr.
I had a
Pratap-
professor
Mr.
in the
Pratap
Delhi
already
School
just
of
said-
Economics, 1 minute.
Sorry.
I had a professor in the Delhi School of Economics who gave a sage speech of advice to us. He said, you know, when you hear long questions, be alert, because the last part of the question contains the answer.
Any more questions?
Any more short questions?
Any more short questions? You're right. Professor James wants to ask a question. Looks like all short questions are going to come from professors. Switch it on, James.
I understand that you have done tremendous work in the planning sector, in the power sector of Karnataka. Very, very exemplary. But why is it that many of the long-term and medium-term plans get back into square one when the government changes or the minister changes? Is this bureaucracy spineless?
That's a very good question, and I think it warrants a serious answer. Karnataka suffers from an acute power deficit. I think it's between 15 to 20% in terms of demand and supply. And over the years, you know, we have been very sluggish when it comes to doing two things. One is putting up new projects, and the other is in demand side management. In terms of putting up new projects, you have the Udupi Park Corporation. Professor, I would like you to kindly make it a case study for your students. Why? Because every way possible, the private sector effort to put up these new projects have been stymied. On the one hand, people say they require power, but on the other, there is marked reluctance to support these large projects on the ground for various reasons, environmental reasons, other reasons, etc. So Karnataka just does not have the climate for large projects, either in the public sector or in the private sector. I'm willing to discuss this with you in greater detail because I don't want to bore the audience. You know, there is a place called Tadri. You know, it's on the coast, Tadri. We have 1,500 acres of land, okay? The government of India announced in 2005 ultra mega power project, 4,000 megawatts. Government of India would create the facility for that, and the states would have to get the land. We have to go through a bidding process, select a private partner and get the project going. Gujarat got it going with Tatas in Mundra. Andhra got it going in Krishnapatnam with Reliance, and so on, in Madhya Pradesh and so on. We were unable to get off the ground because the local fishermen there said that if this huge power project comes, our livelihood will be threatened. And one